What's up, guys? How y'all doing? As you can see by the title, it's apparently a controversial issue in 2021. However, I'm gonna stick to my guts. I'm gonna say what I say. By the way, I'm recording in probably one of the most hottest weathers in Canada in a long while. Really hot at the moment, but it is what it is. Let's go for it. And before I continue, I do want to say that please try to watch the video at the end and make comments. I'm not going to delete comments. You guys can say whatever you want to say, but I'm putting my perspective of why we still should be celebrating Canada Day. Now, originally, I was going to put my points out there and say what I want to say, but I actually, fumbled into actually a great person that I talked to today during my line of work. Today's Monday as well, so and it was a very interesting guy because I didn't expect it, to be fair. Maybe it's just faith. But no, he was an amazing person, and I'm not gonna really reveal his name and everything because his words, what says on the pavement stays on the pavement, kind of like with Las Vegas and all that. But it was a very intriguing conversation. At the start, we talked about like the conservation of like Tesla and whether or not like actually having electrical cars it's really beneficial for the world or not, in terms of like thing. And I've learned a lot within that conversation, and we went to many different conversations about many political issues, and then of course we stumbled upon residential schools. And what was very interesting actually was, and I didn't notice at the time because I thought it was just Caucasian, right? But he was actually Sicilian and Native American, right? And of course, like he said on his side that he couldn't get like a lot of the benefits, because he doesn't classify as enough and everything, which okay, maybe you can make like claims and whatnot, but his mother could, but it just didn't decide to because it just wouldn't benefit him in Canada, or at least this part of Ontario. It would benefit him more of the north, but not. But anyways, he had his say on it, he was very strong about it. He was like, it was kind of a shame that it wasn't really talked about it in like when he was going in, right? And he was kind of like, it's great. It's kind of good that people are talking about it now. And I came in and everything, and I actually told him that I did learn this. I did actually learn about the residential schools, and I did actually learn about the reserves and all that, right? Maybe it wasn't framed in the way that what is framed now in social media and everything, but I did learn it. Like, I did come in with the acknowledgement that I learned it as well. And it really depends on the school that you go to as well. I actually went to a pretty good school during the time with a pretty good community as well. And this was a public school, it's not even a private school, right? So I've learned it pretty well. um and and it just shows like the different culture because again he was like way older than me as well, right? So the things that he's learned compared to mine is very different. But what does this turn out as well, right? And I put my views in. He actually did talk about a little extra as well about there was once a time where Canada actually did give reparations, for example, and he actually brought that up to one of the chiefs. And obviously, when you do get reparations, right, you give it to like the main head, right? And then what happened was the chief, of course, it came to like the casino, which also, to help fund back and everything to like the Native Americans and everything. And the other kind of funding actually went to the chief, distributed to other like Native Americans, right? With that extra funding and everything. And what happened was, and he was distraught as well about it, was he didn't like the fact that, they give money, and for people that don't have like that financial wealth and everything, because of the kind of culture that they were kind of put in the past and everything, they didn't make good use of the money at all, and it's just they went bad and everything, right? And we actually did have a conversation, and I put my point of view on it, and I was saying like I think the issue is really not really about about progressing and everything, because we're actually doing a lot of things. I don't think we're doing things like, how do I frame this? I think we're doing things, but we're not doing things to in the long term to benefit them, right? For example, we put separate legislation for them, which I actually learned as well. Like there's a new like recent legislation for them to kind of like control the things that we have and everything. Whenever we're building more infrastructure, and they also have like certain separate legislation for themselves, right? Compared to like other main Canadians, and you may look at it, it's like, okay, that may be the truth and everything, and like, they deserve it and whatnot, but it's kind of like with great power comes great responsibility, and realistically speaking, if you make different legislation towards it, then again, it's not really, because again, they've been put into a culture where it wasn't bad, and not all Native Americans as well. I think in some Native Americans they've really changed. Like they still preserve, of course, their cultural identity and everything, but in terms of like the culture of building up hard work and all that, right? That kind of takes you from places to places, and I think within himself, he said his Sicilian side of it did, right? And ironically, the funny thing is, he was actually a practicing Catholic, which I was like, it was very ironic because it's, of course, the Catholic school and everything. And of course, he acknowledges the fact that it was a devastating thing and whatnot, right? However, towards the end of the conversation that we had, right, what's very interesting about him, he thought in like what I think was like the general liberal ideology. I don't particularly agree with the new liberal ideology today. I just don't. Progressiveness today is not really progressive. And I think the way he was thinking was very progressive at the time. What he said from all this was, we need to really, of course, acknowledge the past and everything. I don't think erasing it was a really good idea, but he did say that we need to teach a new culture where people can be really proud of and really can progress and move forward from it, right? And that's something that he really agreed on. He didn't particularly agree that, because again, a lot of like the legislation it's put for everybody, right? And also, of course, certain people have complaints about it, but certain cultures, especially people from immigrant roots, right, who has a point of reference from like that bad moment and to where it is now, it's better and everything, right? And when you really look at it, and maybe like as an objective person, right? Because again, we have to acknowledge the fact that we did make mistakes as a country. I think we can all acknowledge it as well. But if we continuously, and I think he thought the same way as well, if we continuously think back of like all the bad things that happen, when are you ever going to feel proud to really progress and move forward? Because the people today that are really working and improving Canada are really people that want to push for better, resources, better, opportunities, right? And the great thing about Canada as well, and I want to put it out there as well, because you could be Muslim, you can be Christian, you could be Catholic, you can be everything. Freedom of religion is probably the best thing that's happened to this country and a lot of Western, the Western side of the country as well. Because again, it moved away from, if you look at it historically context, this divine and conquer thing. And, we talked about that a little bit. And he realized, like, he even really had actually more appreciated the country. I thought he was more Canadian than I was, because, like, obviously he doesn't particularly like the gun laws. I have opposing views on it, but, let's agree to disagree, right? But he really then looked at it as like, oh, but that doesn't push away from the fact that he actually did agree that he didn't want people to really look at that side of things and not say like, represent this is Canada. He wants to look and represent Canada in a new way, for future people as well. And I'm gonna actually reveal it. Actually, he actually works in one of the community centers where he's trying to engage and bring people together, and that is amazing, And he always talked about how he lived in like a multicultural, society and everything, and what it means to be Canadian as well, right? Because again, him and I both knew that Canada is kind of brought together by these universal values. And, even though what started things and all that, we made mistakes. Definitely do. But to constantly berate mistakes and everything, and I can say this, if we continue on this path of just berating people when people are trying to make things better, whatever achievements that they do today and what they do in the future will never be fully acknowledged. You know, there's so many good things in this world that Canada's done over the years, and I think that's something that we should really appreciate more. At the end of the conversation, obviously, we talked about many other things as well, and we agreed to disagree on like certain political issues because we did talk about that as well. But I think that's a great thing that we did at the end of the day. We had a fucking conversation. That is more than anybody can say right now. Because nowadays, we just can't have conversations. We can't really express ourselves. We're so mitigated to have like 30-second clips and everything. You know what? I don't even think a lot of people are going to watch the full, of me just talking about it in general, why I think this way, all right? About like why we should not cancel Canada Day, right? And then on my perspective anyways, right? If we're constantly like doing this as well and making like political statements all over again, when can you appreciate the people of today that are trying to make things better, I think it's just ridiculous that, I think everybody has the right to maybe make a date where, you can protest and whatnot. You can do whatever. But at least have a day where you appreciate the country. I mean, you can disagree with many of the things. I mean, you have the right to even burn this flag right here in your own country. Like, you can even shit on Canada. You can shit on the leadership and everything. You can do all of that and you get no repercussions, right? As long as you're not hurting anybody. So you have all these privileges. Even like, let me put it into context as well. There is a Hindu temple, there is a Muslim mosque, and there is a Christian a temple. Sorry, church. You have a church, right? All in this country, right? Same with America, same with South America, all that, right? Because that makes the Western values special, right? And of course, a lot of the modern westernized culture is actually being spread out to all the other countries, right? Except with those countries as well, and there's why is all these things are happening and whatnot, right? Because they have this divine and conquer mentality, right? Which has always been a very historical thing in the past. People are saying like, oh, this is obsolete, this is ridiculous, right? Well, a lot of the good things that happen, right, from mistakes from the past that we've made and we have progressed as like a society in Canada, right? And these are some of the reasons why I'm particularly going to support it, and he's also, at the end of the conversation, the guy that I talked to, I think he even thinks that it's ridiculous that this is a thing. I think even he says like it deserves a day at least to appreciate and just not to cancel it, right? Because at the end of the day, you may think like, okay, you're canceling these people, in appreciation of John A. McDonald. Well, you don't really need to appreciate those people. You appreciate the people from today. Appreciate the people that actually made an impact, all around the world, that made this country brilliant. I particularly like the flag, because it's such an abstract thing that people can all connect, and it really means a lot to other people. Now, people say actually that, at least for my culture, anyways, that we have this certain thing, and that's the reason why we actually became, prominent in the country. I actually don't think so. I think that a lot of what Canada had in the beginning actually had a big impact on my parents, right? I'll tell you the story on my side, anyways. So, my mother and father, obviously, they both tried to run away from, Sri Lanka and everything because of the civil war and whatnot. And of course, what's great about this country as well, you can see in different perspectives of how the war went out, right? And I'm obviously, because of certain legislation and everything, that's why a lot of the thing, mucked up and everything. And I really thought about it, within the legislation, right? They were considered second-class people, and the Sinhalese people were considered bigger, right? Despite all that and everything, I still have resentment to any Sinhalese people. Obviously, what would make me happy in terms of moving on would be like not having the Rajapaksas and everything. But that's another story, right? But my parents, they moved away for a better life, right? My mother, very hardworking people. My mother actually studied medical engineer. Biomedical. Biochemistry. my bad. And my father did software engineering, right? Well, actually, the funny thing is, right, my father was actually quite lazy when it was because he was a kid of 9 kids and everything, right? And I think fair play to my mother and all that. She actually pushed my father to do better and everything. What I can, but what I do want to say is that I think because they came to Canada as well, with the values that they learned from their parents, I think they've also integrated a lot of what they saw in Canada, the modern version of Canada, of what they saw today. Like my mother, I asked her like, "Oh, do you believe that would you be loved if you stayed in a country where a lot of your people were at, right?" And my mother was like, "No, I actually like the fact that multiple cultures are coming together." And she thinks it's quite weird that if it's just one culture now, that it's a bad thing and everything. My father, asked him like, "Do you consider yourself, Sri Lankan and all that?" And they still call it Ceylon because like Portugal ruling, which is quite funny. But um, my father says that I'm Canadian and I'm happy to be Canadian, right? And what I've seen as well is within our people, there's a lot of appreciation within the immigrant side of things because they actually do more research, like they know like, okay, where do I want to go to have a better life, right? And obviously you do research these things, right? I think they do acknowledge the fact that there has been mistakes and all that, but they do appreciate the fact that it is a country that they can grow and move forward, right? And I asked them, do they ever want to go back to the country if it got better? And they're like, no, because they love the values and stuff today. So from my end, anyways, and what I looked in when it comes to Canada, um, it's sad because it took me 20 years. It took me 20 years to really acknowledge where I am and what I've worked on to become, and it's very difficult because man just cried in the car for like 30 minutes just thinking about it, and looking at other countries and I look at what they have and what they don't have, right, and what we have. And I realize as well, like, why are some people like with less of something are more appreciative than us where we have a lot more, but yet we're still really not grateful for a lot of the things that we do have, and it really was a moment where I was like, you know what? It was a time of really growing up. I've seen many conflicts before, and I watched a lot of anime as well, because it's cool. But what's very interesting is that there are these characters that have long feuds with one another, right? But it takes one person, one strong leader to really push and acknowledge the fact that there has been mistakes, but to really look on and look forward to a more prosperous life. And for all of them that are saying that, okay, well, Canada's done a good job, and I agree. I don't think they've done a good job in many aspects. And like I said, the person I talked to before, he acknowledges that as well, right? Especially with France as well, which they're actually putting separate legislation for them to consider them because they're a very nationalist country. And then again, some of the political rules were just very, I wouldn't say the best in Canada and everything. And but again, you have the right to criticize that, right? But you can do all that, but still have an appreciation of the Canada today. And that's the thing I really want to hone in. I want you guys to appreciate the Canada today. People are looking too much of the past and not willing to move on and move forward to not forget what happened, but to really progress and really move on to a bigger and better Canada, right? If we continue to look back into the past and everything, and I can see this being a thing where they're going to try to cancel Canada every time, I'm just saying, it just takes once and they constantly do it and whatnot. And this mentality of just wanting to fight for something that, should have been fought at the moment of when they realized it was a mistake. That's when you should do it. That's the same thing with reparations and everything, because at the end of the day, or if it's something that's a long-term thing, okay, do that, right? But to add more later on, I just think it's just it doesn't make sense at all, right? Because again, people are inherently in a way selfish, where they are self-entitled and stuff like that and everything, and it just leads to asking for more and more and more, right? But that's why we need to change the mentality, and I think it's a cultural change, definitely, when it comes to that side of things and whatnot. And again, my heart's and prayers, and I understand that. I even talked to the guy. I mean, but even he understands that we need to push forward, and we need to push for a bigger and better Canada, not to really, live in the past, but to progress and push forward, right? Acknowledge the past, acknowledge the achievements at the moment in time, what it meant to them, right? And really push forward, right? So what at the end of the day, what it's really mostly about is really growing up from this, you know what I mean? And I guess that's my take on it. I don't want to drag on too long. I rather, if it's the case, I would rather have a conversation with people and really talk about it in general. Like, okay, because again, I'm acknowledging the fact that we made mistakes, but I do want to acknowledge the fact that there are certain Canadians of today and in this moment of now that are making it better. And I don't want to have this kind of orange day all the time to kind of deduce the amount of achievements that they've brought to this country. Like even for, what is it? The men's soccer team. I absolutely love it. It's a thing that really brings people together. Sport in general brings people together, like you can have different views and opinions on things, but if you support the same team, it brings people together. Even people that are in opposing teams, right? It's in the culture of sport that attracts people, right? And the same thing with this country, it attracts people in as well. And I'm glad that I lived with parents that are they love their country. I love my country, and I want to really give reasons to not like the things of the past, but love the things of the present and the future, and how we're going to push forward to make a better Canada. To not live in the past, but to progress and move forward from the past. And I think that was the biggest thing. And I'm glad that I did talk to this guy at the end. And I'm glad that I am putting this video out. It's probably going to be hard. I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash, especially for people to just watch 2 minutes of the video and not the whole thing. But if you did watch the end of this, fair play. Thank you so much for watching it. And hopefully maybe I've given you a different view on it. Probably not, because you're tied into doing this. Fair enough. You can go and celebrate your Orange Day. I'm going to go and celebrate Canada Day. A progression and move forward. And you know what? I want to give a big shout out to the people that are making Canada better today. That have done a better thing. And fair play to the city of Markham to making a brilliant community and for everybody. And I do want to integrate more people into this idea of Canada, because at the end of the day, I feel like some people, they just live in this country and they don't really feel entitled compared to like maybe some of their countries. They're not really treating them more fairly or less fairly, and that's why they're here, right? They still love the country though. Why can you not do the same thing for Canada? And why can you not acknowledge that? Yeah, we made mistakes. I think every country has made mistakes. You look at it historically speaking, they made a lot of countries actually made mistakes, a lot of mistakes, but really to push on and push forward for a better, prospering Canada. That's all I got to say on this. Thank you so much for listening to my rant and everything. Actually, for the first time, I've bought a fucking Canada flag, and I'm going to teach my children, when I do get children, of course the past and everything, but to really push on and push forward for a better Canada for everyone, right? Because at the end of the day, as much as they've done bad and everything, when you learn through your mistakes and everything, it leads to a better progression of Canada and Western civilization in general, because I think modern Western culture is the best culture. Alright guys, take care.